Hi, everyone. Oh. I think all of you have eaten very well, are probably a bit tired. So I'm going to start with a few questions that mean raising your hand. Not a very popular choice, I think, but okay. Just to check, who here is a developer? Does coding, works with code? Not that many. Who does the sysadmin part? Managing servers, waking up at night? That's more of you. This is a presentation that covers both, I think. It has some code, and it has some, hopefully, advantages for you as a sysadmin. My name is Mattias, and I made a mobile interface for Zabbix, as did many people, by the way. I am from origin a developer, so I love to code and I love to automate things, and because of that, mobile Zabbix got created as well. I'm doing most of the automation at a hosting company in Belgium, where also my need for this application came about. So what is it? It is a web interface designed for mobile use, which means we have bigger buttons for those fat fingers that we all have, and we have just a need for basic information and a very fast pace. We don't want to see, I think, large screens on your mobile phone. You just want to see graphs, hosts, how many triggers do I have fired. So that's where it actually came about. It's written in PHP as a backend, and it has used many front ends, many frameworks. Since I'm not a designer, I used a lot of publicly available frameworks to create mobile interfaces. Some worked, some didn't. These are some of my experiences. For starters, I made a new interface. Not sure if people know Twitter Bootstrap. It's a great UI framework that Twitter released, open source obviously, and it can make interfaces that I as a developer create very ugly, they can make it pretty again. So if you're a developer, not a graphic guy, check it out. First of all, why do you need a mobile interface, or why did I need it? You all have laptops here. Everyone can look at your laptop and look at your screens. Well, sometimes I have a need to look at it on my phone. It's useful when you're on the road, literally in your car. I know you shouldn't be doing this while driving. If you get a text, you will have to check it. So on the road, it's easy to check which triggers did fire, how is my CPU load of that host at that moment. That is useful. It's also useful if you're actually inside a data center, like this, and you only have your smartphone at hand, and you don't need a full-blown web interface. A small, simplified mobile interface can actually help. When do I also use this? If I'm woken up at 3 AM at night because of some disk space issue that I know is not really that critical, my eyes are usually very sleepy, so I have just a simple interface to acknowledge triggers. Nothing with the fine clicking in the Zabbix interface that does not work when you're sleepy. And it is actually very useful for showing off. If you're on a cafe and you just want to show some graphs to your friends, like, oh, this server is doing this much traffic, it is cool to do it on a mobile phone. But creating a mobile app poses a few challenges. You have your iPhones, you have your Androids, you have little Blackberries, you have those Windows phones, and you have everything in between. You have different versions, different operating systems, different browsers. Not as easy as it looks. For starters, you have limited resources. We usually have pretty new iPhones or smartphones because we're an IT crowd. There are also people still running an Android 2.2 with very small screen resolutions. That gives us challenges to present data on your screen. You may not have a lot of CPU power or memory because it's a mobile device. And hope no one here kills me for this. We are ITers. We're usually a bit larger than the normal people. We have bigger fingers, so we need bigger buttons so we can click on it. There are people here that jog marathons, I read, so perhaps I'm the exception. And because it's a mobile device, as I said, we don't need all the information, just a little. Enough, actually. There are too many devices to support. That is problem number one. And I did not realize this as I started it. I thought, hey, I have an iPhone. Probably everyone has an iPhone. I'll just create it for the iPhone. That does not work. BlackBerry and Nokia are not that easy as a mobile device. That complicated the matters. And there's some old legacy stuff as well. I don't think anyone here still has an iPhone 1. You have to make a decision. Should I support such an old device, or should I only support newer devices, since, well, we're ITers and we should keep things up to date. That's a bit of my advantage, I think. This is obviously a tech audience. If someone creates a device supported by Zabbix or the Zabbix API, I think it's safe to assume that we will be running modern and recent devices. My first test was a framework called JQTouch. Now, if you're not a developer and mostly a sysadmin, this probably won't interest you much. But as said, I have no design skills, so I used publicly available methods to create a beautifully looking interface. First, I tried this one. Seemed great at first, until you find out that everything is loading via Ajax, which also seems nice at first, until you have to troubleshoot it. That hurts a lot. I looked at other UIs as well. Sencha is a very big name. jQuery Mobile is a very big name. None of them actually did what I wanted to do. I wanted a simple visual interface to show me data. I did not want massive select lists and great interfaces like they all show. So I had to get more creative, I think. I sticked with this version for about a year until I did not feel like working on the project anymore. So I dropped this framework and started using another one. Now it's using the Twitter Bootstrap. I said, if you're a developer and not a graphics guy, this is a very nice framework. You write simple HTML and they make it look pretty. It's a win-win, I think. What has improved now, if you look at perhaps this version, this does not have advanced navigational techniques. If you want to go back, it's hitting the back button, not again the back button and the back button, as would your iPhone. Not really that useful. Here at the top, you can just simply have a navigation tree structure. You can go back 1 or 3 levels, it doesn't matter. It's a lot easier, and I think it looks better as well. And this took me no effort to do because Twitter made all the effort. Now, when I started this, it's about 2 years ago, I did not find a good PHP API. Now, the person talking after me will hopefully say he has a much better API. I will gladly switch. This is a hack and slash class that I made for interpreting the Zabbix API via PHP. Means it is easily written and hardly has object-oriented structures in it. There is a lot of room for improvement, obviously. And it only features some of the most common things, like retrieving items, hosts, host groups, and graphs with a few hacks. The reason why, because I didn't have a choice then. If I were to make it again today, I think there are better alternatives than using your own classes. Obviously less time consuming. So I wanted a way, as an improvement, to navigate easier. Meaning I just have a tree-like structure at the top, and I can switch back to my home menu easily, or drill down to a specific graph easily. This was not possible with any of the other commercial stuff, but that meant having to make it all from scratch. The forms look prettier. Probably not a requirement, but hey, it's fun. If the idea of having a mobile app is to show off, you would like it to be pretty. There's no point in showing HTML tables and getting away with it. That does not work. And obviously you want graphs on your smartphone because that's what you're going to use to show off. Not just showing off, but say you're in the car, you get a text saying, oh, my CPU is too high. If you can look at the graph and you can see it already dropping, I think there's a small chance that you will pull over. Perhaps the problem will fix itself in about a minute. So, graphs, useful, but a pain in the to retrieve via code. So there's obviously a choice that needed to be made. I want a way to get my information available on my mobile, but I did not want to make a specific version for the iPhone, which requires C and Objective-C to code, or Android, which I think was Java. And then there's Nokia and HTC and Windows phones, and all of them had their own way of making mobile apps. Since I didn't want to do that, and since I was a developer, so I know HTML, I made a mobile interface. Meaning it's not a native app, so it's not as cool as a native app, but it works on pretty much every device. Because it's just a URL where you browse to and you get a modified view of your data. There are a few downsides, of course. If you have an app, you have native offline support. If the Wi-Fi in the building would go down, never happens, of course, you would still have your graphs because they could be cached. If you're only browsing via a website, if the website is not available because your Wi-Fi isn't, then it obviously will not work. And there's limited use of caching. Since I'm using CSS and JavaScript to generate a view, those are files that your browser on your mobile device is terribly bad at caching. So if you refresh a page, chances are you will re-download all those files. So bandwidth is not, it's not really that good for your bandwidth. Let me put it that way. Now the first reason I actually wanted this is to see graphs on my smartphone. Now there are ways to just load, well, there's not a way, you just open your browser, go to your Zabbix dashboard, go to graphs, but it shows you more than you need to see. You have the timeline, etc. You probably don't need that. So I wanted a way to simply view the graphs. At first I thought, Zabbix has an API. This shouldn't be too hard. As with probably everyone here who has worked with the API and had the brilliant idea to retrieve graphs will confirm it's not that easy. So it's very good news that 2.2 will improve this, or 2.4, without promises, because at the moment it hurts. Not so much, well, once it works, it's okay. If you have to troubleshoot it again, it's a pain, and I'll tell you why. This is code, because I'm a code guy. Retrieving graphs now is, as someone already mentioned, you have to fake a post login to the Zabbix dashboard, have to retrieve the session data, and use that session data again to do another curl post on the Zabbix dashboard to retrieve the graph. Not very easy to do, and it has a few security assumptions as well. Because I have to fake your login yet again, I need to store your username and your password temporarily to do that, or graphs won't work. So from a security point of view, this has room for improvement. And it also doesn't work for everything. If you're running specific lighty versions, this will probably break down. And because of a recent change from 1.8 to 2.0, which is understandable, it's an API change, you can have backwards incompatible changes, we need to hack around new ways of logging in. The code in itself is rather easy. We have to do a first login to the dashboard to fake our login. In Zabbix 1.8, we had to use a different login string, actually the content of your button, than in 2.0. So we have to make assumptions that if the API version is for 1.8, use these kinds of strings to log in. If it's 2.0, use these kinds of strings to log in. It's annoying to say the least, but since 1.8 will probably soon disappear, I can live with this. Which was a plea for, well, retrieving the graphs easily. It has already been answered, so thank you. 1.8 versus 2.0 in API changes. There were a lot of small changes. The core work, as in login, retrieving items or hosts. A few of those small parameters changed that require you as a API user to evolve as well. And the most annoying one to troubleshoot in that case was the fact that logging into the dashboard of your Zabbix worked in a different way. Meaning we have to debug via curl, and curl hurts. There's a lot of small changes such as this, where you used to say extend output, yeah, now you would say output equals extend. This hurt back then because documentation wasn't okay. Many of those 2.0 API things were not documented, but I'm glad to say they are now, or at least better. So if you're migrating from 1.8 to 2.0, you will probably have a less hard time than I did. And this is perhaps a bit of a strange issue. The Zabbix API numbering does not follow Zabbix web interface. Now, why is this strange to wrap your head around? If the API version is 1.4, you're actually running 2.0. If this API version is 1.3, you're running 1.8. There's a small logical thing that you need to keep in mind. But you can use it to just do a query for 1.8 or 2.0, depending on what environment you're running. Why did I need this? Because you could just say just support 2.0, that's the latest version. We internally still run 1.8, which gave me the problem that I still had to support 1.8. So, mobile Zabbix, how do you install it? A piece of cake. You download a zip file from GitHub, you extract it to somewhere where it is made publicly available, your web server, your Zabbix frontend, for instance, and you browse to it. There's nothing more to it. The default configuration will work for you, and I'll show in an instant why that is. It does not require installations. There are hardly any dependencies. In fact, if your Zabbix frontend works, this will work. There is a hosted version, and if I were a marketing guy, I would say you can use mobile Zabbix in the cloud, which is nothing more than you browse to a URL where you say, hey, this is my Zabbix API, this is my username, this is my password, I want in. Now I'm going to try something dairy and give a live demo, which failed this front in the morning, so this probably will fail as well. I'm going to give it a go, just a second. Simple website. If you go to start the app, see, I put an effort into naming it logically. If you just enter your Zabbix URL, which I will try to do now. There's a small bug, but that doesn't matter. You should have to enter your password, but it seems it's taking the credentials of the demo app instead. This is how it works, and this is how it looks on your smartphone as well. You can simply browse through them. You have a simple list of your host groups. You can click to any host that there is available, and any graph that you've defined will be made available as well. So simple ICMP check. And if you want to look how it's working, this is how it would look. You can switch your time frames. It's pretty easy, but that's all that I would need on a mobile phone as well. I have no need for more information. If you do, obviously it's open source and you can just add to it. So I would love that if someone could. I'll switch back to the presentation now. So why did I do it? Well, at first I wanted to make a mobile interface for me. Then I got an email, which I found kind of cool. Now, you're probably not Dutch, so I'll translate it for you. It says, hi Mattias, for your information, the mobile Zabbix frontend is now being used on a hospital ship. So a piece of software that I created, built on top of a Zabbix API, is now going around the world in a hospital ship, built to make people better. I got a small kick out of that. Not sure how you would feel, but it's cool to know that somewhere your software is used on a ship for helping people. Now, there are a lot of things that I could and probably should do to make this again better. At this moment, it's a very limited interface. You have your host groups, your items, you can add them, and you can watch graphs. It is by no means a full replacement for your Zabbix dashboard, probably never will be, but there is room for improvement. Problem now would be, you have a lot of smartphones with a lot of different resolutions. You have older resolutions that support perhaps 400 times 300 pixels. The latest ones have a full-blown LCD dashboard in them. It is hard to support all of them. I should do better commit messages. I found a few that just said, I fixed bugs. I had not the nerve to post them as well. But yeah, there is room for improvement in there. There is a lot of room for improvement in showing items. Every host that you have has probably a few hundred items. I don't show them yet. Yet every item by default has a graph. I could use that to expand it as well, but it is not in there, so it is on my personal roadmap. And the big wish list would be to HTML5ify this web app. HTML5, if you know it has offline support, it would be better to have an offline cache of all your data. That would require less API calls to the system to log in. But that proves to be rather difficult because you have a lot of browsers, and HTML5, even though it's a standard, does not act the same on every browser. So how could you, as a user or coder or sysadmin, contribute? Is, well, first of all, report issues that you find. even better would be send in a patch or a diff or a pull request to fix the actual issue. There are a few open issues that are architecturally difficult to fix, and for which I do not have the time at the moment. So if you can contribute by supplying code or by telling me if it works on your device or not, that would actually help a lot. The source is on GitHub. Everything I do should be on GitHub as well. I've had a few contributions as well. So it is up to you to help or not. Not even sure if this is even remotely useful to any of you, because if you have a recent smartphone, you probably use the dashboard on your smartphone. But if it is of use, feel free to add. The biggest part that I would need is more UI testing. I'm using the Twitter Bootstrap, and I think Twitter has a rather big user base, so I think they know how they're making it cross-browser compatible. But I, as a developer, probably break a lot of things that Twitter is making. So I would need you to tell me, does it work on your device or not? If you're running an old smartphone, it's interesting to know if it works and what is not working. So more UI testing, please. If you are interested in helping, send me a ping on Twitter or email me, or just go to GitHub and search for Mo Zabbix. You'll find, of course, all the code, and it is up to you to add or not. I should also say that there are alternatives as a mobile interface. There are native apps for iPhone and Android, except that they're different on iPhone and Android, and if you have two devices, you'll have to purchase them twice. And this is free, so yeah. I think I raced through most of my presentation, so I don't really have that much more to say, unless there would be any questions from your end.
Are you trying to do something with those security issues that you mentioned?
Yes and no. Actually, they would be very easy to fix if I would simply, for starters, put an SSL certificate on the app or encode the data. For SSL, I don't have the money for it, or I don't want to purchase it. As far as the security implications for username and password, I think most of them can only be fixed if the API supports retrieving graphs. As long as it does not do that by default, I still have to simulate an extra login, and hence have to keep your username and password somewhere. So yeah, there are plans, but I think the API needs to evolve first.
Okay, thanks.
The question is, do you have mobile Zabbix for my Nokia Symbian?
If your Nokia Symbian has a recent browser, this will work.
Okay,
it just depends on your browser. If it's ancient like IE6, then I'm sorry. If it is recent, then it should work. There's a demo, you can use it as we speak. All you need to do is enter your Zabbix URL, if it is publicly available, your username, your password, and you can test it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, do I need to buy a new phone or not?
I'll help you. It does not work on your phone, buy a new one.
We have one question here.
Where are currently stored username and password?
At the moment, I think it's a plain cookie, which is obviously not secure. But I also made this sort of as a hack in the weekend. There is room for improvement. So I think at the moment I'm only storing the username in a cookie, and the rest is kept in session data. So that should be relatively secure. Also, don't use this on the current Wi-Fi, since you're not actually secured and everything is HTTP. We could all just sniff your username and password. Don't do it. It's better to be honest, I think.
Anyone else? Okay.
Then thank you.
One more question here.
You don't have the money for the SSL certificate, but you get one for free. So go ahead and go and get all.
Signed as well, not self-signed?
It actually doesn't matter if it's signed, so it may not track that well the browsers, but you get the encryption.
Okay, I'll check that. Thanks for the tip.
One more.
Actually, it's more a question for the Zabbix team. How many effort are you guys willing to put into this, as I think a mobile interface is quite useful these days? But are you planning on contributing to efforts like these?
Maybe not directly with patches, but we're, like I said, we're currently trying to improve the API to make site developers much easier.
Okay, thank you.
To complete this, I think my wish list would be that if the Zabbix dashboard had sort of a fluent design that just adapted to your screen size, this app would probably be obsolete. So if there's a lot of data on the dashboard, I don't think it's possible to do so. At one day, I hope I can simply rm-rf this file or all these files because the dashboard supports it. But I think that's a lot of effort as well.
I'm going.
How about putting that as another front end to the Zabbix base code?
It's also possible, but then Zabbix has to support it. If I do this, it can break on every phone and nobody would probably care. I don't get paid for this.
Have you thought about it?
No.
Okay.
They could, but I think it's more effort than gain. The amount of people that will browse this via a mobile phone, I think it's very limited.